Hello, dear loves. Dana here. Welcome to this exploratory video on the solstice and what it is. Today I really did want to share with you why we celebrate solstice and what its significance is. Many people associate the solstices with Wicca or with Celtic Druid magic, but the solstice is actually something that should and has been recognized worldwide for quite some time because it relates to the dance of the sun. I like this term, the dance of the sun. And I'm being reminded that we are solar beings. We exist here because we have this sun. The sun is life-giving. It only is here. Well, it's been here. We're only here because it is here, right? So our relationship with the sun and a dialogue with how we relate to the sun and how it impacts us is an important rite of passage for every woman, man, and child. It is vital for us to understand our relationship with the sun. So the solstice, and solstice in Latin means to stand still with the sun. Sol being sun and stis meaning to be still. And so it's a form or time period of recognizing where the sun is. And when we talk about solstices, there are two types. There's usually what we call in the Celtic system Yule, which is a winter solstice, or Litha, which is summer solstice. Now Litha, let's look at Litha first because it's usually the time period where most people recognize the solstice, partially because of Shakespeare. And he wrote, I think, Midsummer Night's Dream about the summer solstice. And the summer solstice is the time period, Litha is the time period where the sun and its relationship with the earth reaches a point where we experience the most amount of light. And you would have noticed that there's a time period where in the southern hemisphere, we get the longest day. And in the northern hemisphere, it is the exact opposite. And so if you look at the solstices, there is often this duality playing out, this exploration of the relationship that we have with the sun, where in the southern hemisphere or the north, if it's in the middle of the year, where the sunlight, the available light, is the longest, the daytime is the longest, and contrary on the other side of the planet is Yule, where the sunlight and the available light is the least. Now, how does this impact us? Because ultimately the dance of the sun is one of impact. Remembering that we don't exist except because of the sun, similar to the earth also, but our whole lives only exist because we have this solar energy that charges the fields with energy in order to be able to grow the plants and support the animals and supports the entire ecosystem that we exist. And as much as we live in concrete and glass jungles today, it still is necessary for us to consume food that is grown in fields that relies on the sun and its relationship in order to bloom, in order to grow, and in order to decay, because both sides, the blooming process, the decaying process, are a natural part of life. Something that we often forget when we are in our concrete and glass jungles. And so the dance of the sun, if you are currently heading into the solstice that is the longest day of the year, usually this is a time period where a lot of your energy will be drawn out into the external. There will be a lot more enlivenment in your system. So you may notice that you sleep less. You may notice that you have more thoughts or ideas, or that the energy around people seems to be a little bit more enlivened. For some people, depending on your archetype and your relationship with solar energy and with the fire energy of the planet, because solar energy is a fiery energy in the elemental system, you may find this time of year uncomfortable because it might be too external. There might be too many demands in the external world that ask you to be outwards and outwards facing. And that is a conversation that you need to have with you. And this is a good time period to acknowledge. Why do we celebrate the solstices? Because it is important for us to every so often stand still and take a snapshot at how we're doing and what's going on. And these time periods are really a great way for us as a collective, as a conglomerate of people, individuals, all pushed into a same ecology, to be able to stand still and acknowledge certain types of energies in our systems, certain types of energies in our communities. And so the outwards facing, pulled out energy, for many people, this energy can be a little bit overstimulating. And also because, particularly as I'm recording this video, I'm in the summer solstice. You can't tell because I'm wearing a jacket today because it's actually cold. But I am recording this on Litha, the 22nd of December here in Australia. And as I record this, this is that time period where we're also heading into seasonal celebrations. We're heading into Christmas and New Year. Whether you celebrate that or not, there's a significant proportion of us that pushes that energy into the collective mindset and awareness. So let's acknowledge that. Let's not bypass that just because there are other belief systems around here. This is just as important as all the other belief systems. The end of the year energy also is quite an interesting time period, because even though the end of the year itself doesn't have an embedment in the energy of the dance of the solar giant and the earth, it does have an impact on us because our societies have for quite some time acknowledged the Gregorian calendar. And the Gregorian calendar, if you don't know much about our time-space markers, the ones that we use at the moment are the product of monastic life. They were the scholars of our society as things started to get a lot more written and a lot more codified. These types of things do reflect what we would call masculine ideas or patriarchal ideas, which is why, for me personally, I like to point out that it's a Gregorian calendar that is used to mark passages of time. And there's a reasonable amount of individuals on the planet that adhere, that practice their lives around this time-space mapping system. So therefore, it'll impact us whether you're a woman or not, okay? This acknowledgement, again, acknowledgement, really important part of Ro's work and of us acknowledging the meaningful aspects of life and increasing vitality. So anyway, I just pushed a whole lot of extra stuff in there because that's the type of person I am. So celebrating is about acknowledgement. Celebrating why we celebrate these things is about honoring. It's about honoring the nature of our lifestyles, the nature of our humanness, and the nature of our relationships, and how the seasons impact us and our energy. And so during Litha, not only is our energy external, but your energy will also move faster. So the ideas will come faster and quicker. And also individuals do tend to like to do a lot of activity. And for some of you, this might be work. You might just be really work focused and really productive and producing things. And so this time of year where there's a lot of it's a really good time period to acknowledge all of the work that you do, to write down all of the things that you have achieved up until now, just to acknowledge also where your energy is going. And these types of things, because there is an increased amount of light on the planet, it is a really good time to get a clear picture of how you're investing your energy and how it's impacting. When you can do that, it does help you, it helps all of us to be able to understand how we're investing our energy, how we're acting as agents of those belief systems and the things that we value, and to maybe make adjustments heading into the end of the year, or if this would be mid-year for you, if you're in the Northern Hemisphere, then that would be maybe a reframing of what you want to do for the rest of the year. Next, and after that, or alongside of that, obviously at the same time in the other hemisphere, is Yule. And Yule is often a time period where people are really starting to feel the depths of winter. For some of you, depending on where you are on the planet, that winter might be really deeply cold, it might be really insulating, and you might feel a sense of sadness. And that's because the relationship that we have with the sun during that time period is less obvious because the days are shorter. And so on Yule, it is the shortest time of the year. During that period of it's cold, we need to be inside more, we need to be more insulated. We have alongside of that the energy of being internal and the energy of looking inside. And I mentioned depression before. This is also a time period where a lot of people really find the mind chatter might start to pull them into spirals of deeper landscapes of places that feel uncomfortable. It might also be the time period where you feel divorced from safe relationship. And that's not to say that you are, because, you know, the perception, the way that we see the world is by definition an illusion. It's an idea. It's not in itself necessarily strictly true. But during Yule is a time period where a lot of individuals struggle to find the light. And so when we're talking about solstice, standing still with the sun, acknowledging practice, this is a good time period to sit with yourself and acknowledge where you've come from, and to acknowledge how much dedicated practice you've put into and invested into yourself and also the beings around you. Whether that's you showing up to your calling and letting that be available to others, or whether or not that's actually you being in service in the sense of actually showing up to people and their needs. When I say that, of course, I just want to remind you that in a fashion, it's a challenging experience to simply be in service to others and to not also in the same breath recognize the self. So, and as we're talking about an internal landscape rather than an external landscape, Yule is a really good time to acknowledge self. It's a really good time to really truly sit with the experiences that you've been having and to hold yourself with loving compassion, recognizing the energy investment that has taken. Because, you know, as much as we talk about energy, giving and receiving, the truth is that we're always expressing energy, always anyway. So in a fashion, there's always a giving of some kind of energy. And there's also always a conversation of us receiving energy of some kind, whether we believe it or not. And so during this period of time for the solstices, it really is a good understanding of saying, okay, cool, there's this aspect of me that's feeling like I'm not receiving. And this part of me that's feeling like it's not receiving. What's the story there? What is the dialogue? What is the conversation that I'm having with myself around that? When you allow yourself time and space to acknowledge the conversation, stepping out of the avoidance of looking at the things that feel uncomfortable, because a lot of the time we will reframe things that are uncomfortable in order to feel more comfortable. It's really important that during this time period, when you're in Yule, that you give yourself full permission to be with the things that make you sad, upset, and feeling unworthy. We ask you to do that not so that you can dwell there. We ask you to do that because acknowledgement is power. And when you acknowledge a thing, particularly if it's dark or sensitive or feeling like it's a vampire, when you give it attention, often it starts to relax and it starts to communicate different stories. And as it communicates different stories, if you've ever been to my sisterhood circles, we've often done some work where we work with peering behind the things that are obvious. And we do this as sacred practice. This is the psychic landscape, to be able to access the deeper truth, because the deeper truth is often different to the one that we're telling ourselves. And during Yule, it's a really good opportunity to acknowledge the external facade, acknowledge the stuff that seems to be going around you, and to go, okay, I know that this is true on some level. There's some truth here going on. I'm acknowledging that, noticing that, and feeling and sensing that. But I also know that there's something internal that's also driving this. And I have the responsibility to converse with that for me. It's my responsibility to acknowledge that. I can't expect that to get better. I can't expect that to change if I'm not willing to acknowledge that it's there and to give myself permission to express it. And so with that, happy solstice, whether you're in Yule or Litha. I hope that this has been a helpful video. If you'd like to share any comments or questions around the video, please post them. Please make your comments known. They are welcome. Okay. Much love from Dana, Spirit Butterfly.